Welcome to my corner of the garage. Today is a video about this serving tray that I made my wife for Mother's Day this year. Now it's actually the second iteration of a tray that I had recently built, as you can see here, as an auction piece for her school. Brought in a decent amount of money, and she liked it so much that she almost didn't want to stick it in the auction. Her students hand wood burned in the graphic on the front. She really liked the look of the butcher block bottom with walnut sides. And so I decided to surprise her this year by making her an even nicer version. There's some accent pieces in this. I decided to CO2 laser engrave the graphic on the front so it looks nice and professional. But I also hid a little surprise on the bottom, which we'll show you later in this video. I'm really enjoying this video build playlist that's all about wooden gift ideas. So subscribe if you're interested in making, gifts for friends and family, as that's kind of what I do as a hobbyist woodworker. So thanks for joining me today and enjoy the build.
Well, I'm pretty excited about this. A couple summers ago, I slapped up a walnut tree that had blown down in a tornado, and finally getting to use some of it. It's dry now, and I'm gonna make something with it. So obviously, got some splitting here on the end, but I'm gonna be getting some pretty small stock out of it. Same thing here, but man, the grain pattern on this is going to be beautiful. So since I'm just getting small stock out of it, I think this is going to be perfect. I think I'll be able to cut just before this knot, use this end for right now. And because I'm going to be cutting this into strips, I think I'll be able to use each side of this crack here.
So now that I've got all the walnut milled up and ready to use, I'm going to move on to my next species, actually a couple for contrast. This is red zebra wood. I don't have a lot of it, but it's really pretty, and I love using it next to walnut. The redness really will come out once you get some stain on it. So this will be the second species, and then here next I'm going to mill up a little bit of maple. So I'm just getting the width set so that I can cut these maple strips accordingly, so those will all fit up nicely together. I'm actually now going to rip a couple of these walnut boards in half because the sides were too long as it was. So here's the final assembly of what the sides are going to look like. So they've got a wider piece of walnut at the bottom, then your red zebra maple, and then a smaller strip of walnut at the top. So I'll get those glued up, and they're not quite at their final height yet. I will trim a little bit of the bottom walnut piece down to get the final height of the serving tray sides. While that's in the clamps, we can move on to the bottom part of the serving tray. And this was some butcher block that I basically glued up together, and it's half of the thickness of what the original was. Remember I said in the beginning that this is the second iteration of this serving tray that's for my wife for Mother's Day. Well, this was the resawed other half of it. Whenever I'm planing down smaller pieces like this, I like to put a piece of plywood that stretches from the infeed through the outfeed, and this just kind of ensures a constant plane to reduce potential snipe. And this worked out really well. The pieces came out really smooth, and there were no divots, there was no snipe. And so now you can see I'm getting them to their final height by just trimming off a little bit more of that bottom piece of walnut. I forgot to have the camera rolling for the first few passes on these grooves that are going to go in the side pieces in order to accept the bottom piece of the butcher block part of the tray. I'm going half the thickness of the material, and I'm trying to dial in. I think this is going to be my final pass in order to accept that bottom piece. And so just running these through the table saw. In hindsight, I wish I would have used the router, as I don't have a flat top grind table saw blade. So that would have required less cleanup after the fact, but here I can offer that piece up, and it's dialed in pretty nicely. It's not too tight, got a little bit of room to slide in, but not going to wobble too much. And so now I can cut the other 3 side pieces. At this point, I can cut all the side pieces to their final lengths. First, I'm just going to put one 45-degree cut on all 4 pieces before I can then go in and really dial in each of their lengths, and so making sure everything's perfectly square. I'm offering up the bottom piece so I can get my actual physical measurements. I'm going to mark that both on the long and short sides. And then I can take it back over to the miter saw. And right now I'm kind of just trying to get it close. I'm marked inside that groove, so I can't really dial it in well yet. And so what I'm doing is just sneaking over to that pencil line until I get that exactly the length I need it. And so after just sliding over a hair at a time, I finally get that right where it's needed. Then I can mark with a pencil the other piece based off of the measurements of that first one, and then I can just keep dialing it in until I now can offer those up. And if they are the exact same length, then I know I'm going to keep things nice and square. See, I'm marking the short side, got the first one cut to length, marking the second one, and so now as I line those up, get those dialed in, and I know that they're going to be, again, exactly square, because each of the short sides and the long sides are perfectly equal in length. Just doing a bit of a dry fit right now before the final glue up, as I want to make sure everything fits now in case I need to address or recut anything. But everything looks good, so now before the glue up I want to go ahead and get the handholds put in, and I'm just marking these out where they're going to be centered in each one, figuring out which Forstner bit I need, and then transferring the lines so they're perfectly symmetrical between the 2 handles. I started out with a 1-inch Forstner bit, and as I started hogging out the material, I noticed it was not fully cutting through all the accent material. I really wanted the walnut to be exposed on the top and bottom of the handle, so I wanted to fully remove the maple and the red zebra. So I'm just moving up a bit size, and I'm not going to drill out all the way through. I don't want to blow out the underside, even though I do have an insert plate in there. It's just not always as clean of a cut. So I'm getting all the way through, getting the point of the Forstner bit through, so I've got a little hole to line up and come through the other side. And what this does is this just ensures that you're going to have a nice, crisp, clean hole on either side of the handle. And it just, I don't know, it takes things up a notch. You're not going to blow out your material at all. And all you're left with is a little of the material that it kind of pushed through, and so you can just pop those out and you've got a really, really clean hole on both sides. I'm going to hog out the majority of the material now with a jigsaw, and I know this looks sketchy, but just know I was very aware where my hand was, and in fact I released the trigger before I finished out those cuts, and so I just was ensuring I wasn't going to put myself in harm's way. My favorite way to really cleanly make these handles is to actually use the router. I've done these handles a few different ways. Again, you can do it with a jigsaw and then try and clean things up with a sander, but they're just never these perfect ovals. And so what I found is by putting in a straight bit, I can really dial it in, and it'll take a few passes, as you'll see. I'm just setting it up, getting it the bit set up. What I'm doing is setting that fence right at the top of that hole. Also going to put that stop in on the far side. Also using a feather board, so trying to just ensure this is going to be as perfect as a cut as possible. But you'll see I'm going to get the majority of it now. It's going to take a couple of passes, and I'm just trying to sneak up to the very top of the circle on both sides, and by just spending a little bit of time, this again really just takes it up a notch and makes it look a little more professional by not having a wavy handle that you tried to hand sand out or file out. So you can see I got that dialed in perfectly, and then it's just a matter of flipping over on the other side and kind of rinse and repeat. Everything's going to get an 1/8 inch round over, but I'm going to go ahead and do the inside parts right now, because once it's fully assembled I won't be able to get all these pieces rounded over. So this is just the insides of the top and bottom of the sides that are getting the round over now. Plus, while I'm at it, I'm going to go ahead and get the handles the same round over, 1/8 inch round over. Just again, makes it smooth to the touch, makes it comfortable to pick up. You might have noticed when I was milling up the walnut that there were a few imperfections, a few cracks, a few little places where there were some knots and things. So nothing major, but just going ahead and filling those in with some black CA glue before I started sanding. We're going to shift gears now and head over to my friend Kevin's shop. He's got an awesome CO2 laser, which I've used on numerous projects. And we're going to use the same design that my wife liked. She picked out for her students' project that they wood burned by hand. We're going to use his CO2 laser. The other fun thing was I had my two sons, who are 2 and 5. We got handprints of them without Mom knowing, and I was able to put those into Illustrator and then export those so that Kevin could laser engrave those onto the back of this serving tray, personalizing it and really, making a really special gift for her. We're not going to use this on the entire project, but as this is the bottom of the serving tray and is going to see a little bit more wear and tear and potentially, some cups set on it, some potential moisture, we're putting a few coats of this on both sides, which will hopefully really seal this from any water damage or anything. But we won't put that on everything. You'll see I'll put a spray lacquer on later. But getting my maker's mark on there, and then it's going to be time for assembly. I really recommend this step when putting together boxes, or in this case anything with mitered corners, but by putting this long level on my workbench and resting the pieces up against it as I tape them together, it keeps them in a nice straight plane so that the ends are going to come together nicely, and you're not going to get one side of a corner much higher than the other. We're going to double check things by dry fitting it all together, and things started looking really great at this point, so it's time to add some glue and get that final assembly going. I really recommend this next step too. I'm putting painter's tape on the inside faces of each of the corners, and this is just going to help with the cleanup from the glue squeeze out once we put it all together. And I'm obviously having to cut off the bottom here to account for the tray sliding in the groove, but this is going to make cleanup a lot easier, especially as much work as I put into this. I want to keep those corners looking as clean as possible because finish really does bring out any glue squeeze out that you missed in this process. I am going to put a few clamps on here with just a little bit of pressure. I don't want to wrench those down. Everything's square at this point, but I want to make sure the mitered corners are as tight as possible without any gaps. So that's what I'm doing here. Now that it's assembled, I can go ahead and finish out putting the round over on the top and bottom, but I'll also go ahead and do that on the edges as well, so everything has a nice smooth 1/8 inch round over on the entire piece. The bottom groove was actually cut with these little rubber feet in mind. So that groove was cut a little bit shorter than these rubber feet are tall. So by putting the rubber feet on the butcher block, they just barely sit above the walnut. So it's not the bare wood that's actually going to be sitting on the table surface or whatever. These little rubber feet will just barely protrude, but they're not going to be visible when it's sitting on a surface.
Other present.
What?
Look on the back. Look on the back.
Yeah, and look on the back.
Wow.
My handprint. My handprint.
No
The
way. Oh my goodness. Wow, and this is
Isn't
gorgeous.
that cool? So that's red zebra wood and maple.
Oh, I love it.